everyone, konnichiwa. Just thinking today, konnichiwa is probably not the best greeting to use because it actually means good day and it's not quite midday yet, but I've kind of gone with it. Anyway, so I hope you all checked out last week's lesson. It was a bit of a long one, but we looked at a few things which were quite important. But before we go through that, I've just got a little bit of a spiel. So I've just posted the link in the chat. Got a link to this Google Doc which I'm looking at right now, so you guys can look at what I do today. I've also got a link to my ad on Gumtree if you'd like some private lessons. I'm just kind of running these group lessons on YouTube, but of course if you have any questions about Japanese, just feel free to ask and I'll go through them. As mentioned, I run these private lessons as well. You can email me here. I help everyone, so I've got students who are absolute beginners, total beginners. I've had people who've been doing it in school for a few years, and they need a bit of help with their exams, things like that. I've also got some older people who have got Japanese wives or husbands and are just wanting to learn a bit of Japanese so they can communicate with their relatives, I guess, their new relatives, family-in-law. And I do university exam prep as well as JLPT. This is a Japanese language proficiency test. Very good exam, I think. And I always encourage all my students to take it. And if you'd have to listen to quite a few of these lessons to get JLPT ready, but for sure it could be done. Alright, a quick review of what we did last week. So we were looking at our ga particle and a bit more depth. So we kind of saw the difference, or what the actual role ga has, and we saw it mainly kind of comes up when we use these question words. Now we saw that we can kind of rearrange our sentences, but we still, when we rearrange and use this wa particle here, we still really needed to know what we were talking about. So this is why ga is so useful, because we can go to know what kind of sushi, as apart from like, within food that you like, what is it that you really like. So you can just ask, it's just a much simpler way to ask questions about unknown things. Okay, and then we kind of looked at how, let's just make a note here, how the difference between these two, what kind of difference does it make in a sentence which is almost identical. Okay, and we kind of see that this ga, it kind of points out something specific, whereas wa is always just going to make general comments. Okay. Now the next bit we looked at was took up pretty much the whole lesson, and we didn't even finish it, but it's to do with counting in Japanese. Now, this is quite a big topic, but if you know everything that I went through last lesson, plus the little bit I'm going to do today, you're at about what I would call you reach year 12 level, so that's kind of final year in high school level for Australia. So you're doing pretty well, and on exams you're always going to get questions asking about money and how many animals there are and how many tickets, all these things to deal with numbers. But we just kind of started off with this recognition that there are no plurals in Japanese, so when they want to talk about multiple versions, like multiple dogs, multiple tickets, basically more than one of something, we need to use these counters. But before we got there, we looked at our numbers 1 to 10, and we kind of showed you that, well, once you know these numbers, you can count pretty highly. And we kind of saw our first counter is sai, so we just added our number san, the counter sai, and that's 3 years old. Alright, I showed you how to count above 10, got all the way to 100, 1,000, and then we looked at mon. Just put this in here. This is another handy word. I'm not sure why I didn't write it, must have just forgot, because I did talk about it. So this is man is 10,000. So we saw here ichi man en satsu, so a 10,000 yen note, the bill. Okay, so then we kind of started looking at date. Okay, this is within the counter section, because we'll see that they use all types of counters to talk about date. So first we looked at our months. Then this table, I would recommend that you spend quite a lot of time looking at this table. It's really just a memorization activity, but we'll see a little bit later when we get on to this table's terribly formatted. I really should try and fix this up. When we get to our generic counters, we'll see that these are very similar. Okay, and then we started looking at time. So we had our character for G, and so we just put, this is our counter, so ichi G, 1 o'clock. And then we had our minutes, which is basically this character fun. There's a whole bunch of exceptions though. So 24 minutes, we say 20, and then 4. 20 4 Okay. And then we had our words for AM and PM as well, which are set at the front. So then we looked at spans of time, and this is all bolded. Spans of time, where we're just using this kanji, which a lot of you may be familiar with if you've been doing Japanese for a few years, but it means interval or space. So we can put this onto all those things we just looked at, and then it's spans of time. Now there was a bit of an exception for this, which is when we look at spans of months. So I did quite a long discussion about this little character here. I would really recommend you guys go back and read it. But that's how we do spans of months. And finally we looked at counters. So how do we count certain types of objects in Japanese? Now this is an area which a lot of people don't like about Japanese. I was never really bothered that much by it, and I guess the main thing that I would say about it is that Japanese people mess this up pretty regularly, so I never felt bad about messing it up. Alright, I've got a little note to myself from the past. Okay, generic counters. So we just looked at a whole list of counters which have specific usages in Japanese, and they were in that table that we just looked at. But what if we have something which doesn't fall into this category? Well, then we need to use what's called this generic counter. Now you have to be a little bit, I wouldn't say careful, but you just have to be aware with this generic counter that if there is a specific counter, you're supposed to use that. So you can't just randomly use this generic counter for every type just because you don't want to remember the actual counter. So we can't do that. But if it doesn't have a counter, then you're welcome to use it. So one common time you'll see this counter is, for example, when you're talking about directions and you're talking about how many corners. Like, so if you say you want to say, oh, I want you to turn at the second corner, you would use this counter rather than a different one. Alright, so how are we going to make this look nice? There's really no way. I think I spend more time adjusting tables. Probably should do a bit more preparation. Nah. Live stream it. Ooh, so close. There we go. That'll do. Okay, so we can write them in kanji. So we basically have there's two groups here. It's 1 to 5 and then 6 to 10. Now, this is the kind of benefit about the generic counter. It only goes up to 10, so only you have to remember 10. But, you know, this is kind of revealing what it actually does. It's very limited in what it can apply for, so you're generally only talking about a handful of things at any one time, and you can't even go higher than 10. Alright, so how do we write it? Well, we just have the kanji for the numbers, which I haven't really gone through yet, but this is just the numbers for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we add a hiragana tsu to the right of it. Now the reading of these is not how you'd expect, okay? So it's not like we're saying ichi tsu, ni tsu, san tsu. Doesn't quite work that easily, unfortunately. And these are all kind of, I guess, well, they're not technically exception readings, but they are probably not what people would normally expect. But if you look up these kanji in the dictionary, these are available readings. Hito and all this stuff. So we've got hitotsu, futatsu, mitsu. So notice we've got our little tsu there. So this kind of makes a pause, and then the next tsu is we kind of a double sound. So if I had to write this out in English, I would write it out like this. So we double the sound of the next tsu, mitsu versus mitsu. So yeah, this is for example, no, Mitsubishi. Alright, Mitsubishi, Mitsubi, Mitsu. Bit of a different sound. And we have another one here, Yotsu, and then we have a big tsu again. So Itsutsu, and then back to our small tsu, Mutsu, Nanatsu, Yatsu, Kokonotsu, To. Now, if you can remember back to our counter here, where is it? Some of these should sound pretty familiar. So, not the first day, but futsuka. And if we compare it to the one we looked at, futatsu, mikka, mitsu, yokka, yotsu, itsuka, itsutsu, muika, mutsu. Okay, so we can see, basically we can see that these sound very similar to each other all the way up. Right? We had to versus toka. Okay, so there is some similarities here. So I always say, well, look, if you're going to learn the days of the calendar days, you should learn hand in hand with the generic counter. It's going to come up at about the same time. Okay. I don't want to mess with that right now. I probably could change the table so it looks slightly better, but hey. So yeah, this is our generic counter. So like I said, we can use it for corners, for example. Okay, but we can't use it if there is already a counter available. Okay. That's pretty much all I wanted to say with counters for now. There is some kind of useful words we can say. So for example, if we add me to the end of a counter, it kind of gives you the order. So we can say, for example, ni futatsu me. Okay. And futatsu me is kind of saying, you know, futatsu is two, and me kind of this kind of means the second. Oops. Okay, and we can do this for many counters as well. Alright, next topic. Alright. Compound sentences. Alright, so what is a compound sentence? Guess we should start there. So a compound sentence is just a way of combining two sentences. And we're going to be doing three types of compound sentences. Okay, so we're going to be learning the words for but, so, and despite. So when we say but, it's kind of to show contradictions. Alright, you know, I wanted to go, but it was raining. So is kind of showing reasons. So I like to use this this formulation. So kata is the word we're going to learn. That means so. But the order of this is like, you know, you have your reason, you have kata, and then you have a consequence that flows from that decision. So right, so it's like, well, it's noisy here, so I don't like it. Now, despite, again, it's pretty similar to but. We're going to kind of show a contradiction. We're going to say, you know, despite this person being a teacher, they are quite young. Okay, so there's no real explanation for that. Okay, so when we look at but, we're going to see that there are two ways to say this word in Japanese. So we have kedo and we have ga. Now I want to point out that this is slightly more casual and this is more formal. But otherwise they both mean but. Both mean but. So how are we going to use these in sentences? Well, we just kind of attach them to the end of what we need to say but to. So we could say, for example, we could say, today I'm busy. Okay, today I'm busy. So isogashi is busy. So today I'm busy, but ashita wa hima. And hima is free. So as for today, I'm busy, but as for tomorrow, I'm free. Okay, so we can kind of show that this but means what this but does. So if we're going to be slightly more formal, we're probably more likely to have, when I say formal, I'm really using this as a substitution for polite. But if we're going to use the ga, and I want to point out also that this is not the particle we were just looking at. Okay, but if we were going to use ga, because it's slightly more formal, we would kind of expect to use des as well, okay? They kind of go hand in hand. It's not a requirement, but it's just if you're going to be saying ga, it's a bit more formal, so you're probably also going to be likely using des. Alright, so we've got the same sentence. Kyou wa isogashii desu ka? So as for today, I'm busy, but ashita wa hima desu. As for tomorrow, I am free. Okay, so we just kind of show our contradiction, or, you know, we've got something, but something else. I guess it's not really a contradiction. But, you know, most of the time it will be. Alright. Now, we can say these sentences, we can kind of chop and change them. Like I said, we don't have to be super strict. So we could say this as well. Okay. Or we could say it this way. So there's, I guess, four different ways we could say it. Don't worry about this too much. I don't know that's going to happen. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can say all of them. 忙しいけど、忙しいですが、忙しいですけど、忙しいが. So des doesn't always have to be put in there. It's not like they have to go together all the time. Now, one thing that we have to keep in mind is that in this example sentence, the thing that we've attached the ga and the kedo to, every single one of these sentences, it's been isogashi. Okay. Now, isogashi, if you guys remember from a previous lesson, this is an e adjective. Okay. And e adjectives are similar to verbs in a lot of ways in that when we want to make changes and conjugations, like this compound sentence stuff we're doing right now, you can just add it directly to that e adjective. You don't have to do any conjugation, right? You don't have to do any changes. But what if we don't have an e adjective? What if we have, for example, a noun or a na adjective? How do we do it? Well, in this example, hima is actually a na adjective. So this will be... Actually, let me think about that. Hima, free time. Actually, I think this might be a noun. Yeah, it would be a noun. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The rule's going to apply to it the same way because nouns and na adjectives work like this. So when we put the first clause is kind of the important bit. Now, explaining a clause, I guess very simply, you could think of it as like a mini sentence fragment. It's kind of like a self-contained sentence. Well, it could be a self-contained sentence on its own, but you know, we're dealing with compound sentences here, so we can join clauses together. But basically, when we have our hima, there has to be some. When we have our noun and na adjective, there has to be something between the noun or na adjective and then the ga. Now, the default that is going to be da. And we've actually done a whole lesson on da, so I recommend you guys to look back at this. But here we could say something like, we could swap this sentence around. Okay, I might just copy it. Okay, so if we have this sentence, this is wrong, by the way, in Japanese. So we can't say hima kedo. It's grammatically incorrect. So like I said, we need a placeholder, and the default is da. Alright, so this is fine. Hima dakedo. Alright, and the same thing if we were going to use ga instead of kedo. So maybe if we bring it slightly more formal, but hima daga. Okay. Now, we don't always have to put da in here. Like I said, as long as there's something in between the ga, kedo, and the noun and na adjective, that's fine. So, for example, if we go polite, that counts. Okay, so hima desu ka. So the da gets replaced. So there's got to be a placeholder here, right? Da is the default placeholder, but we can put whatever. Now, if we think back to our negatives, all right, hima, it's a noun. How do we make nouns negative? We add a janai. Okay, so we could say this. And just keep in mind, whenever I say something like that, we can always put in kedo as well. Well, you know, ga and kedo are pretty much interchangeable. Just have to remember that there's different politeness levels. Alright, so as long as there's something here, negatives, polite, whatever, or just da, then that's okay. We're grammatically, we're in compliance, so we don't have to worry about it. Okay, now it's not a super important point to remember this, just keep in mind it'll sound a bit strange if you don't put that in there. Okay, so that's but. So next one is we're going to be looking at so. So. Now, a lot of you have probably learnt that this word kara, and we'll also be looking at nod there. A lot of you would have learnt that this word means from. And some of you may even think of it as because. Now, it's not wrong to think of this word as from. And indeed, if you look it up in the dictionary, that's what it's going to be translated as. But all I'll really say is that particularly when we're looking at compounds, so what we're doing now, it's probably better to think of this word as so. Just because it helps us with the word order. Now when we're dealing with time, for example, like we looked at last week, this word will be used quite a lot, right? We could say ichiji kara niji, so from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and that's fine. From works in this instance. But here it's much better to think of so. Now node, just like we saw before, this is just a slightly more formal. Okay, so kind of for written Japanese, but for sure people say this out loud. And it's just, yeah, much more this one. So this is slightly more casual. Learn to type. Alright, so both of these words are going to be used. Alright, so the example sentence I gave for this was it's noisy here, so I don't like it. Alright, so we've got koko. Now look at my first or second video of basic Japanese, and I explain what koko means, but it means here. Got our topic particle, wa, so as for here. Urusai, this is an I adjective, and it means noisy. And we've got our kara. Alright, and like I said before, I adjectives we can just put them straight on there. So urusai kara, so as for here, it's noisy so. We've got ammari suki janai. Now this is a really important set phrase I would recommend everyone try and just memorize, because this just means I don't like it very much. So as for here, it's noisy so, I don't like it very much. So again we see our reason. It's noisy here. Kara, and then consequence. Alright, reasons, kara, consequence. So ammari suki janai, this is our consequence. I don't like it very much. Okay. Now we can say this the same way, but using our node. Now, like I said, node slightly more formal. So again, we're going to kind of expect a des to be in there. Not necessarily. And we could write these just like I did before with all the different combinations. Urusai kara, urusai desu kara, urusai node, urusai desu node. You know, we can do all 4 combinations. These aren't the only ways you can write it. Just keep in mind that kara is more likely to be with the plain form. So we can see here we've got plain form. I guess here we can see it. But here we've got a des. So we would more expect node. But for sure it's not the only way. we would see it written. Now, just like before, we have to be careful with our nouns and adjectives. Okay? So, just like before, we need da. Okay? But this is only for kara. Now, if we use node, we need to use na. Okay, so this works the same as it would before. So if we take this example, so we can use a different word here. So we'll use a na adjective this time. So our na adjective is shizuka. Okay, so koko wa, let's just type this up first. So we can't really say these sentences because we've got a na adjective here now. So we need to put something in between. Now, let's put this up here. So when we use kara, we see we have to use da. Okay. Shizuka dakara suki. Now for node, we have to use na. I want to say it's much of a muchness whether you put it attached to here or put it here. I mean, in Japanese, this would all be one sentence anyway. I guess it's technically more correct to put it on here because it attaches to the na adjective, but it's really much of a muchness. In Japanese, you just don't have spaces, so it's not really a consideration that they worry about. But anyway, so koko wa shizuka dakara suki. So because it's quiet here, I like it. Koko wa shizuka nanode suki. Because it's quiet here, so I like it. You should probably take out that because. But anyway, you really should say it with so. So as for here, it's quiet, so I like it. As for here, it's quiet, so I like it. Right, so this is an identical sentence. And then just as before, the da and na, they're both just placeholders. So if we have any kind of conjugations in there, so des is an example, it's a polite conjugation. You know, we don't need it. But shizuka desu kara. No, notice we still need to put this in here. Suki janai, suki desu. Okay. And we could do all the stuff the same thing we did. We can use janai. Okay, so you know, all this is the same. This is now a different sentence. So koku wa suki shizuka janai kara. So as for here, it's not quiet, so I don't like it. All right. You know, this janai just has to be here so that we're consistent now with our sentence. But just to keep in mind, we could put janai in here. So not so hard conceptually, but it's easy to forget to either put the na or da in there when you're not supposed to, or forget about putting it in here. But you get better at it over time. Okay. So the last one I want to look at is our despite one. Okay. So despite, in spite of. Okay. So This is pretty handy. Okay, so we could say something like okay, so despite Tanaka-san being a teacher, they're very young. So as for Tanaka, sensei nanoni, okay, because sensei, this is a noun, so we need to put our na. So just like we saw with no de, where we needed na, no ni also needs na. Yeah, otherwise we can do other conjugations as we've seen before. So Tanaka-san wa, so as for Tanaka-san, sensei nanoni, despite being a teacher, tottemo wakai desu, very young. Okay, I want to point out we don't actually know if this is a man or a woman here. So I could say he's very young or she's very young. Okay, and we could look at this type of sentence. So kotoshi wa fukeiki dakara Christmas nanoni okyaku-san. So these probably shouldn't use kanji. Alright, so we got a few new words in here. Okay, so fukeiki means economic recession. We have Christmas, and we have customers, and few or scarce. Alright, so fukeiki. This word means economic recession. Now you might think, why would I ever need to use this word? Now, this word actually kind of comes up quite a lot in Japan because they're quite, their recession, their economy hasn't been doing super well for these last few decades. So this is not an uncommon word actually to hear in Japan. Fukeiki. Just I want to point out that when you guys look at this word in kanji, it's kind of an interesting word. So this fu is like a negative prefix that you can use. So we see on this a lot of words, and it just kind of means un, im, non. Alright, so keiki is kind of like good, and fukeiki, so bad, blah blah blah. Don't worry about K so much, but ki we've seen before in genki. Alright, it's kind of like a spirit or whatever, right? So we're kind of talking about a downturn. Now Christmas, we just write this in katakana. Okyaku-san, this is the word for customer, and we'll notice a bit of revision that we've got our o, our honorific o at the front, and then we have san. Okay, so we've kind of got a double honorific, and of course, you know, Japan really loved their customer service. This is one reason I always recommend people actually go check out Japan. The customer service at restaurants and shops and stuff is a bit next level sometimes. It's at least compared to Australia. I don't know about other countries, but it's they really do seem to go above and beyond, even at you know, cheap restaurants and stuff like that. And tsukunai, this just means few or scarce. So kotoshi, I guess I should use this word as well. This is a handy one. This means this year. So kotoshi wa, as for this year, fukeiki dakara. Alright? Now this is actually from the last section we looked at, right? Kara is reasons, means so. And fukeiki, this is a noun, so we need our da. Fukeiki dakara. So as it's due to it being an economic downturn. Kurisumasu nanoni, despite, and again we got Christmas, which is a noun, so we need a na. Kurisumasu nanoni, despite it being Christmas. Okyakusan ga sukunai, there are not many customers. So some of you might point out, well, wasn't the rule that it's only if it's the first clause that it needs these placeholders? Yes, you are right, but this is, when we consider this, this is actually the first clause, because we don't worry about this because it's not noni, it's kara. So it's not actually breaking the rule. Anyway, as for this year, because it's it's an economic recession, so despite it being Christmas, there are not many customers. Okay, so we can combine the two. We can combine the two. Now, in colloquial Japanese, these sentences change pretty drastically, but I'm not really going to go into what it is, but basically they leave out certain clauses. So this is why, if you, like me for example, when I kind of first came across this, I actually learnt this word without any context, dakara. Now a lot of people kind of translate dakara as because, therefore, and I'm not saying that's a bad translation, I think it's good. But just keep in mind that this isn't a word that's just kind of sitting by itself. It's, you know, instead of saying fukeiki dakara, you know, someone might say, as for this year, it's an economic recession. And then someone else might say, dakara okyakusan ga tsukunai. So there's not many, you know, therefore there's not many customers. Okay, so you can just kind of start sentences with this phrase. Alright, so that's pretty much all I wanted to go through today. This is quite an in-depth topic, so I didn't want to go too much into depth with all these kind of things. Now, I'd like to start looking at some revision though. So we'll just kind of look back over some sentences that we've done before and look at how we can test our knowledge, alright? Now, all these sentences have been taken from previous lessons, and all I've done is take out something, put an underline in there, and then given you multi-choice basically. Okay, so I normally run, once I've done this kind of first section where we look at nouns, now adjectives and e-adjectives in a fair bit of detail, then I kind of stop and we do revision for a few weeks just to see if everyone's got it basically. Alright. Now this format is kind of copied from the JLPT, so I mentioned that right at the beginning, the Japanese Language Proficiency Test. So because that exam is all multi-choice. Okay. Okay. I want that go down. Thank you. Okay. So we got Tanaka and we got Yamamoto speaking. Alright. So Tanaka says, "Dare ga gakusei?" And Yamamoto replies, Yamakawa something gakusei. Alright, and then we've got our three options here of I mean, you might read this as ha, but you should probably look at these other ones. Okay, well these are all particles. So this one's probably also a particle. So wa, no, ga, ni. Alright. And then you might think, well, what has to go here? Well, first we should kind of work out what they're asking. So, we got this word dare. Alright, this means who. We got a ga, and this should kind of pop at you as a particle, because this next word is gakusei, which is student. Now, traditionally I've been writing these sentences like this and putting spaces, but keep in mind that Japanese, they don't do this, right? They don't put spaces in. Now, the other thing, well, before we get to the answer, is that if these sentences were written in Japanese, they would use kanji. Okay, so we could write it like this. This is the kanji for dare. This is the kanji for gakusei. I wouldn't recommend you learn this right now, but for sure you should already be trying to learn this kanji, gakusei. So you can see the particle kind of jumps out at you because it's the only thing there. Right, and this is particularly true with wa, you know. Alright, but doesn't help us answer the question. So what would the answer be? Well, you'd have to, if this isn't immediately obvious, I would recommend you go back and check my videos about the ga particle. But just remember, the ga particle lets us talk about unknowns. Okay? So, dare ga gakusei. So, who is the one? Who is the student? Alright? Now, some of you might want to go with wa, but this is incorrect. It's an incorrect answer. And to understand why, I would just trying to remember how did I do the strike through? Oh, that's right, it was like Alt 5 or something. Alt Shift 5, that's right. Okay, so Y is an incorrect answer, okay? Because it would be as for who is the student. And we can't, you know, that grammatically that's incorrect in English, and it's also grammatically correct in Japanese. So we can't have wa. No? Well, we have also done no before, and no is used to join two nouns. So technically you think, oh, this might work, but it joins two nouns and it shows a relationship between the two. So normally membership or ownership or something like that. And we can translate this as of and read it backwards. So student of who? Okay, and then Yamakawa no gakusei. So this would be, sorry, not student of who, but student of Yamakawa. Doesn't really make sense, considering the question is who is the one, who is the student. And then we have ga. Okay, now this one's the correct answer, so we won't look at it just yet. Now ni, we haven't really looked at. We'll see this when we get to verbs, but this is our target particle and it doesn't really make sense here. So this kind of sentence is a really good one to learn about. One of the really handy usages of ga. Just as for who is the student? Sorry. Who is the one, who is the student? I should have said. And then we respond, well, Yamakawa is the one who is the student. Okay? So this is our answer. Yamakawa. Yamakawa ga gakusei. Okay, so we've got 4 answers here, and we've got this question, which is just something, and toki. So we've got isogashi, oishii na, ookii na, byoin. Alright. Now this word toki, this kind of means when, or kind of, it literally means time, but here it's going to mean when. Now, this is a noun. And then you might recognize, well, we've got an E adjective, what looks like a na adjective, what looks like a na adjective, and then I'm not sure what this is, but this could be either It's not an E adjective, it could be one of the exceptions, I guess. But it kind of looks more like a noun or a na adjective. We don't really know. So which word can we put in here? Well, we could say that just by looking at the three of these, without knowing what they are, that all three of these could go in here. Because we got an E adjective, and we can tell by this she, E, particularly at the end, like 100% of the time I'm going to say this will be an E adjective when a word looks like this. So this could go in here. Now this has got a na here, but we've also got the she and the E here. So technically it works, because you know if it's a na adjective we need to put the na in there, but we know that when we've got a she and E here, this tells us it's an E adjective. So this is incorrect. Now okina, this is this could work because it's not an E adjective. But this is incorrect as well, because toki, one of the, like I said, this is based on a JLPT style exam, and the philosophy of the JLPT is that when you're answering questions, you have to pick the most appropriate. So while technically this could work, big time doesn't really work as a sentence, or big when. Now byoin, you could try this one, but if you know what this word means, this is hospital. Alright, and we can't just put a noun onto another noun like this without some kind of particle. So this is no good either. So we must be left with our E adjective, isogashi toki. So basically when you're busy, or busy time. Alright, so you can just go back over your E adjectives section for this. Alright. What about this one? Okay. That's the next one, don't worry about that for now. Okay. So we've got Bob. And Bob says, Watashi no something wa Nihonjin desu. Let's put this next line. Nihonjin desu. Then we've got ga, hito, haha, tabemasu. Okay, so what's he saying? Well, watashi, this means I or me. No, this is our particle. We've got wa, another particle. Nihonjin, alright, so Nihon is Japan, and Jin is person. So Nihonjin is a Japanese person. Now we've got our ga particle. Now hito, this means person as well. It's the same character as this. It's just, as I mentioned in my kanji video at the very beginning of this series, this is the same kanji, it just gets read depending on if it's in a compound like this or if it's kind of sitting by itself. Now haha means mother. Specifically it means my mother as opposed to your mother. So you talk about your own mother like this. And we got tabemasu, which means to eat. Alright, so probably not going to be that one. Now, no, what does no do? Well, no joins two nouns and shows the relationship between the two. So, watashi no ga wa Nihonjin desu. Not quite. Watashi no hito wa Nihonjin desu. Now, this isn't wrong grammatically, but it's kind of a strange sentence. Watashi no hito. So it's kind of like talking about a slave or something. You know, as for my person, it's a Japanese person. So probably not going to be that one. Haha. Alright, so here's our answer. So watashi no haha wa. So as for my mother, Nihonjin desu. Okay? So notice, because he's talking about watashi no, he's talking about something, that belongs to him, I guess. Family members are one of these things. They're kind of within your circle, like my mother. So when you're talking about your own mother, you can't use the honorific form, which is okaasan. Okay, we can't use this word when we're talking about our own mother. But someone else's mother, sure, we're allowed to do that. So, Tanaka-san no okaasan. This is fine. But when Bob's talking about his own mum, you have to use haha. Same thing when we talk about father, right? Chichi is my father. Otosan, someone else's father. Right? And tabemasu. This means to eat. So this is no good here. Okay, so haha. Watashi no haha wa, as for my mum, she is Japanese. Okay, I think we'll make this the last one. So we got hito. Hito. And our answers are ha or wa, I, ne, ga. Now hito, we just saw this up here. This means person. Here we can get rid of this as well. This means person. Now ha, this means tooth, or it could be our wa particle. I, this means good. It's an I adjective. Ne, this is our sentence ending particle. Kind of means isn't it. And we have ga, which is our particle again. This one shouldn't be too hard to work out which it is, but it's this guy here. Okay, so I hito, alright, a good person. Okay, I think we'll leave it there for the revision for right now. This compound sentences is quite a tricky lesson, so I didn't want to make this one too long. As always, if you have any questions, please leave a comment or send me an email. Just send me an email. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be doing these live streams every week, and as always, if you let me know what you'd like to cover ahead of time, we can make a whole lesson about that, basically. The link to the Google Doc is in the video description, and a link to my ad is also there if you want to check that out and get some private lessons. And I generally like to say that the private lessons are better than these YouTube ones, but they're very, very similar in content. I mean, I've got a bit more leeway with the, seeing as I'm on a computer, because normally I'm at your house with just a tablet, but in the end, there's not too much difference between the two. But I'm obviously going to be giving you homework, specific tips on if you're having some issues, and if you follow my lessons, I was thinking about this the other week, but this basic Japanese, I can teach you basic Japanese in about 5 hours. So I wouldn't do that all in one sitting. But if you gave me about 5 or 6 hours of your time, I would run through basically what I've done up until today with a lot more examples. And then if you kind of learn all that and do the homework, you'll be surprised at how much you can talk about. And you could do JLPT actually quite soon after that, as long as you've learnt enough vocabulary and the associated kanji. But the grammar for the entry-level JLPT is not that hard. We've basically covered most of it by now. Little bits and pieces here and there, but not much more. Okay. Well, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll catch you all on the next video.